look at 2021, 2022. So here we can see a glance of 2021, 2022. Virtual cards and mobile contactless continue to gain weight in the region. Transaction volume continued to increase on ATM, POS, web. We've seen rapid growth in agency banking business and social commerce. The agency banking business has taken different dimensions in different parts of sub-Saharan Africa, with mobile money driving it in some parts like Ghana, and then we have cards and POS driving it, in Nigeria. We have the continued growth in the number of immigrants. It's interesting to mention this because this also brings some mix, the mix of foreign knowledge also trickling in from people that have emigrated, and also remittance, more and more taking center stage, even to the retail level. Regulatory frameworks, we all remember the Naira redesign, the open banking framework. All these have had impact on the growth of fintech and payments in Nigeria and also in Sub-Saharan Africa. Digital currency launch happened in Nigeria in 2021, and digital lending continue to grow. This is also contributing to empowering of people in this region. Pan-African payment has always been a challenge. Africa continues to rely on dollar to transact between African countries. Many people are beginning to look into this space and to see how this can, the efficiency in this space can be made better, and also to reduce, the possibility of fraud, and bringing this into the formal sector. PAPS is championing in this regard, even though PAPS is still largely based on dollar transfer. And we have other players also coming in, like Pipe. Again, with all this, the fraudsters continue to look at Africa, and that is why we continue to have a rise in cyber fraud. That is the negative part this brings, and we all need to look at ways of fighting this. I want to show us this slide because this slide will help us to see what is really happening in Nigeria, to be specific for this slide. A lot of people out there think electronic transactions are driven by cards, in Nigeria. If you think that, you are right, because card payment continue to grow year on year. However, if you're thinking of coming into the fintech space, then you need to start looking beyond cards and start looking at the non-cards. This slide shows us a trend between 2010 and 2022, showing us what the card transactions are doing versus the non-card, majorly driven by transfers. You would see that from 2010, we had 98% card transactions, driving electronic payments in Nigeria. And by the time we got to 2016, this had reduced to 75%, and the non-card, majorly driven by transfers, has taken 25%. Fast forward to 2019, it was almost a 50-50, but non-card had taken over, representing 52% of the industry, while 48% is cards. Today, despite the growth of card transactions, the enormous growth of card transactions, it represents only 20% of the total e-payment volume in Nigeria, while the non-cards, driven majorly by transfers, has taken 80%. It is worthy to mention that 50% of this non-card transaction volume, not value, volume, is driven by fintechs. What are the market trends that we see that would shape the future of fintechs in Nigeria? more players are beginning to come in. The trend is unlikely to stop. The investment and funding in 2021 alone was over $700 million for Nigeria alone. The business model is also changing. More and more people are beginning to accept non-conventional ways, of saving and transacting. This is because of the confidence many of the fintechs have brought, with their disruptive model of doing business. Some of the ones I know they are mentioning is zero transaction fees, powered majorly by fintechs before they came into the space. The fee, we usually have huge transaction fees to be paid. Revenue growth versus profitability. The traditional players, which are largely banks, focused on profitability. The fintechs came with another model, focusing first on revenue growth. Of course, over time, this will transform into profitability because it's a volume game. The fintechs also focus on customer as a product, ensuring that each customer feels like a king and building their products to satisfy the unique needs of each segment of the society. We see that the line continues to get very blurred. Today, you can hardly identify who your partner is and who your competitor is. What do I mean by that? A competitor might be your partner in another part of your business or even in the same business, or could even be your technology provider or your platform provider. With this blurring line, it means in the future, we'll no longer compete head-on with each other, but more and more competition will be the watchword. For the traditional institutions that refuse to accept this, their faith might be unknown in the future. Innovation. The good thing about innovation is as more players come in, the only way you can have your market niche is to continue to innovate. And we are happy that regulation is also seeing this, by coming up with some policies to also support this, even though we want more and we want more collaboration between regulation and the industry. But the fact that this has been identified and policies are also being developed in this regard, not just to support innovation, but also to protect the consumer. With all this, we also see an exponential rise in cyber crimes. The checkpoint reported that Africa witnessed a 50% jump in cyber attacks in 2021, emerging as the most targeted region, averaging about 1,500 attacks per week. This is food for thought for us as we innovate, as we come in, as new players come in, and even existing players come in with new products. We need to not only focus on revenue growth, we also need to pay very good attention to cybersecurity. People in the region are spending more and more time on social media for information and socialization. This is just a snapshot of some of the active monthly users on some of the popular social media channels: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Maybe the next one will be adding Thread to it. And you can see a lot of people in the region are spending a lot of time on the internet doing social media, majorly through their mobile phones. I mentioned immigration initially. In 2020, almost 41 million people emigrated from Africa, compared to just about 22 million immigrants in 2000. This number continued to grow. And this number, as it grows, continues to open Africa up to other parts of the world. For the people emigrating, there will be need for them to remit money back home for several use, either utility bills, fees for education, building construction, etc. Fintechs will be focusing on how to make these payments easier for those that have emigrated, either within Africa or outside Africa. And we'll continue to see focus on solving and making payments seamless and easier in these fields. With all this being said, this is what we think the future outlook would look like. We would see biometrics payments coming in. This will be majorly to address security and also to promote financial inclusion. With the likes of NIN in Nigeria, people would start thinking, or the thinking has even started. We've done a POC. We'll see fintechs that will start developing products around biometrics use, not only for NIN, but other ways we can capture biometrics, fingerprints, face, iris, and the likes to transact. NFC, recently the central bank released a circular on contactless payments. NFC and contactless transactions will continue to grow. Today, 80% of the cards in Nigeria are contactless enabled. However, there are no terminals to use them in Nigeria. We see fintechs coming to focus on this very soon, with traditional players also trying to make headway in this. So we see this tap to pay as part of what we drive fintech in the near future. Remittance, as immigration grows, the need and use cases for remittance will continue to grow. And this becomes part of what we'll need to solve. Fintechs, I trust, would key into this. Mobile money will continue to drive payments. In Kenya, it's already taking the forefront, but we'll continue to see a blur line between the mobile money operators and the banks. Today in DRC, something is being set up to try and close that gap between the mobile money operators and the banks. I know fintechs in Ghana are also looking into this. So very soon, there's going to be a very blur line between mobile money, and the traditional banks, and also other methods of payments that the fintechs are coming to drive. Coincidentally, before we started, I think one of the hosts mentioned something on embedded finance. So, and this is also in my slide, embedded finance, with seamless integration for financial services into business processes of non-financial service companies. Lending will always grow. It's just the types of lending will also continue to metamorphose. We're going to have increase, in mortgage offers. We're going to have more buy now, pay later, which some people would call value financing. Nano lending will continue to grow. The successful fintechs of the future, would need to also grow, maybe probably working with other people from other parts of the industry on identity. We need to have better identity management. I see some fintechs also trying to play in that line. I don't want to mention names because nobody has paid for adverts here. Insurance. Fintechs will start paying more attention into insurance as the payment space is becoming more saturated. Insurance will also start receiving more and more attention, and we see that fintechs would also grow this part of the industry. Of course, payments, in-app payments will continue to grow, digital wallets and integrated financing for large purchases, creating ecosystems for some of the FMCGs that we have around. I know I'm running out of time, so this is my second to the last slide. I will not want to end this without mentioning the Gen Alpha. The Gen Alpha are those born between 2010 and are still being born today. If you have children in this generation, you agree with me that they've taken us to another level. This is a generation of firsts. From birth, they're already swiping your phone and swiping your gadgets, and future development, we start looking into this. Again, some financial institutions, majorly outside Sub-Saharan Africa, are already looking into this. Some of us in Sub-Saharan Africa are also looking into it, but we see this focus growing with kids teen banking apps coming up, with apps that would teach children other things, try to encourage children probably on household tasks, and ways to interact, more like social media, but apps that would educate them on financial education and the likes, while also tapping into their own knowledge. Because believe me, these kids can also help drive innovation by just sitting down and studying them. So my presentation will not be complete without me mentioning this coming fantastic generation. I'd like to conclude by letting us know that the penetration of fintechs in Africa, right, while the support from overseas is very important, Africans will be largely responsible for the growth of fintech in Africa. This is already evident in the penetration of mobile money in Sub-Saharan Africa. We mentioned Kenya, we mentioned Ghana, and the widespread of online real-time payments, with Nigeria leading in that, and we are proud to say with other parts of the world following. The various tech hubs in Africa will play a pivotal role in ensuring this development. The large tech hubs are located currently in Lagos, Cape Town, Nairobi, Cairo, Johannesburg, Accra, Casablanca, Tunis, Abidjan, and Abuja. We have other locations in Africa, and we believe that the destiny of Africa FinTech lies with Africans that understand the pain of Africans. Thank you very much.
Wow. Thank you so much for that presentation. While I will still ask you to, because we said we are going to have questions at the end of the this session, but there's a question that is on the board there. I don't know if you can just quickly take that, guy, because you still have 3 minutes of your time to just respond to that. There's a question there that they're asking that can we phase out POS device in payment industry? And then I'm asking this question because we are looking at reducing the cost of setting up business. For example, if you are agent, for example, or you are a merchant, for example, and you want to acquire a POS, asking you to go and bring 20,000, 30,000 naira, at this point in time might be a bit difficult. And at the same time, as a business, if you are giving out a POS free of charge, a POS of say 30,000, 40,000 naira, is a cost to you. So can we at some point take out a PS device and then probably use something else?
Yes. So thank you, Mr. Cousin. The answer is yes, we can. And the answer is also that this process has started. Today, we have fintechs in Nigeria that are already supporting the technology we call tap to phone. This relies on the contactless properties of the cards that the debit cards carry today. So how it works is you simply approach whoever you want to transact with, a merchant, an agent, or an individual. And by tapping your card on the phone, that has the app that supports this, the phone must support NFC. By tapping your card, then you can transact. So it simply means that you no longer need a POS. The phone can replace the POS. That is one. Another thing that is already happening in the industry is there are some devices, there are biometrics devices that can work with fingerprint, that can be attached to any Android device. So this device can be attached to Android phones. It can be attached to Android POS terminals. And with the right application, again, we have, this is already in the market. The POC has been done on it. You can actually transact using biometrics. And what is left is for more integration into banks, for the banks to adopt this. Once more banks adopt this and can key their customer base into this, then this would work. If the bank refuses to adopt this, I see a situation where a fintech will come in the near future, will build a database for biometrics. Today we see fintechs issuing cards in large volumes. A fintech will come in, try to crack this by building a large database of biometrics, and everybody will ride on this. So the answer is yes, and the journey has started. How long it's going to take, I cannot say. But for me, I think within the next 5 years, the use of the traditional POS would reduce because of the influx of phone and other cheaper devices. Thank you. That's my response to that question.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. So quickly, we move to our next speaker. And okay, Mr. Fem, if you can stop sharing your screen.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. So, but you still stay around for the questions, sir. Okay. So we quickly move to our second speaker. So, like I said, is an Amazon. That is what I call her in my quiet time. So, and she is somebody that, if we are talking about financial inclusion in Nigeria, in Africa, she is what I'll call authority in that space. Recently, she granted an interview on BBC where she mentioned that investment is the lifeblood of any business. So without investment, businesses dies. So she is going to be sharing some of our own perspective about this particular topic. So I'll be calling on Mrs. Faith Adeshemowo. Is the CEO of Social Lender. Hello, Mrs. Faith, over to you. Can't seem to find.
Before Mrs. Faith comes on board, I think she is not on the call at the moment. Right. All right, before she comes on board, I want to say thank you to Olufemi. That was a very thorough presentation, taking us to the origin, the beginnings of payments, cowries, and taking us into the future, and not leaving the kids behind in some of the products that are being built today. I thought that was very thorough. And also, there's something very critical he mentioned, where we would see less of competition and more collaboration in the future, right? And that is something we want to see. That's why we are putting together some of these masterclass series where collaborations, partnership can be struck. People can meet people. People can take an idea or two, and share with another person and start building products, right? So one of the things he also talked about was embedded financing, where you can layer up banking services on non-banking institution. So we see more, retail businesses operating banking businesses, right? And we see more non-financial players carrying out financial transactions, right? So that is something I hope we all took note of. I hope we all that gave a clear sort of description of what the future looks like, where whether you are a bank or not, you will be called upon, or your services will require banking solution, and you will do banking transaction at one point or the other, right? And so start thinking about, in my business today, how can I layer up, how can I embed financing into what I do today, because that's where the future is headed. How can I, do transactions that are profitable, and we see a lot of it happening, today. We see a lot of e-commerce sites partnering with merchants, or e-commerce merchant partnering with financial institutions for collections, for payment and the likes, bills payment, collections generally, and the likes, and they are making profits. They are marginal profits in those transactions, in those partnerships. So, as a insurance player, as a business player, as a trade and investment person, or as a farmer, if you're on the call, or if you get to watch this video, you need to start looking at how do I layer financing on what I'm doing, and how do I target Gen Alpha, right, who are people born between 2010 and beyond. These are the new markets. How do I target them in my transaction at the moment? I see we have Mrs. Faith back on the call, and she's the next speaker. Mrs. Faith is currently the CEO of Social Lender, a digital financial service platform operating in multiple markets, including Nigeria, South Africa, Ghana, and the UK. Looking at also expanding into newer markets. She'll be lending our voice to understanding the fintech ecosystem of the future, what we should be focusing on, what we should be looking at. Hi, Mrs. Faith, your camera, I don't think I can see it just yet.
Hello, I had my camera on. Do I
All right, fantastic. So over to you. Are we good to go?
Yes, we're good to go. Hello, everyone, and thank you guys for this opportunity. I don't take it for granted. Super cool to be here. Thank you for all the past speaker. You've done so much justice to this conversation that I'm wondering why am I going to add anything to it. So I'll be a little bit casual with my own talk. I kind of like a more relaxed atmosphere. I feel like the last speaker, I really would love to take a bit of a tutelage from him. He does a good, fine job, delving into really deep topics. So I guess one of the first things I just wanted to talk about is just for the benefit of, people who think, okay, what is the fintech ecosystem that you all talk about, and why are we even focusing on it? Why is it important in the first place? I think one of the things I'd just like to talk about here is the fact that an ecosystem, maybe I should go into the definition of an ecosystem. An ecosystem is a collection of organizations that typically are working together to reach a common goal. And so when you say something is an ecosystem, it's a collection of organizations. What kind of organizations would you be talking about here? So if it's a fintech ecosystem we're talking about, there are some major organizations that you want to be looking into. Now, the organizations also have their own subcategories. So again, let me take it back again. We've got the fact that this is an ecosystem. An ecosystem is a collection of organizations. And now we're now talking about the fintech ecosystem. The fintech ecosystem, obviously, is financial technology ecosystem. It's a rather big topic to be looking at, but So if you're looking at the collections of organizations, you have different categories of organizations that you would say make it part of the fintech ecosystem. One of it is obviously social lender. That's the startups. So the startup, it makes a sub ecosystem in the larger fintech ecosystem. And then we have development. So development, we're looking at data analysts, cloud computing. We're looking at things like that. That's also another subsector now in the fintech ecosystem. The government as well is a part of the fintech ecosystem. Regulations, regulatory bodies, they all stem from the fact that things have to be regulated, policies have to be regulated, activities have to be regulated. And that's why the government makes a major part of the fintech ecosystem. And then obviously the traditional is financial institutions as well. The traditional financial institutions are obviously institutions that we're very familiar with. We're talking about the banks, we're talking about the microfinance institutions. And lastly, the most important people here, as far as I'm concerned, is the customers, the end users. As social lender, we call them the end users. These are the people that, we are quite fine. All of us as an ecosystem, we're all looking to be able to make sure that things work out fine. We're trying to make sure that we deliver products, we're trying to deliver services. And obviously, if we don't have customers that would take up these products or services, then there is no sense in us doing any of this. So I think that as an entrepreneur, I see that the customer is king, and the customer plays a really large role in the fintech ecosystem. I think my conversation will be coming from the customer point of view and how the customer influences what the fintech ecosystem will be like tomorrow. The fintech ecosystem for the future, as Kazim said earlier, is now. I believe that we're seeing so many things happening in the ecosystem. And as a result of that, lots of things are changing very rapidly. Now that I'm driving my conversation from the customers, I also want to talk about live events as well. So I think that in trying to understand what the fintech ecosystem is, you also want to think about the fact that we're live today, we live in this world today. And obviously there will be changes as a result of activities or world happenings. So we're looking at the customer and we're looking at world happenings. Obviously, the big elephant in the room here, when they talk about world happenings, will be COVID, will be the recent pandemic. That pandemic has affected how consumers or customers or end users, see the financial ecosystem. In fact, that pandemic by itself has forced the fintech ecosystem to expand, to change, to morph into what it is today. I don't know if it's a disadvantage or an advantage, but you find more and more people socializing online than offline. It used to be the other way around at some point, but this has gradually changed. And obviously this is now leading, providers to be able to look at the ecosystem differently, to be able to look at how the customers are serviced differently. I'm still going back into just a little bit of an explanation on what the fintech ecosystem is really about, just for people who might need a bit of a recap. So when we talk about the fintech ecosystem, I've mentioned 5 major parts of it, sectors of it. It will be the startups, the developmental space, the government, the traditional institutions, as well as the customers. When you look at all of this, you want to talk about the startup space. The startup space, we're seeing payment startups, which is really on the rise at the moment. We're looking at also wealth management. We're looking at lending, we're looking at crowdfunding, we're looking at capital management, and we're also looking at insurance. I want to think that insurance is one of my best friends right now. I think it's a sector that is growing also very rapidly. And then we're also looking at, the development part, where we're looking at data analysts, we're looking at security for users online, we're looking at cloud computing, things that are making life a lot easier for us to be able to deliver technology. And then obviously I've talked about the traditional financial institutions, which are the banks, the microfinance institutions, a number of them out there, and then the customers. There are different types of customers from my own point of view, but there are two major categories of the customers. We're looking at the offline customers and the online customers. I think that this category of customers sort of also impacts greatly on what the future of the ecosystem will begin to look like, or already is looking like. From a social lender point of view, for instance, we service the offline customers and online customers. And as a result of the fact that we have two very separate and large, but two very separate and different markets, it has forced us as a startup to look at our product delivery very differently. For instance, the way we will deliver a product online will differ very strongly from how we'll deliver a product offline. I want to believe that the goal eventually would be for more offline customers to come online. And today we see that there is a huge rise in income, in products that are being delivered, in services that are also being delivered, because more and more customers in Nigeria, for instance, are coming online. Because more and more customers are using digital services, digital phones, is obviously driving the fintech system or the ecosystem a lot more in Nigeria. Ghana is strongly behind, well, we'll say about Ghana about the same. And then we have Kenya too. Kenya is obviously way ahead of us when it comes to digitizing of, using digital products for a lot of people, because a lot of their customers are already online. So in a nutshell, I just try to describe what the fintech ecosystem is. Like I said, it's a collection of organizations working together to reach a common goal. I think that the future of the fintech ecosystem is, what is the goal? What is the goal we're trying to achieve today as a collective of different organizations? And what is that goal going to look like tomorrow and the day after? So there's a lot of talk about AI taking your jobs. There's a lot of talk about what AI can do. There's a lot of talk about blockchain. How does it actually impact life as such today? I think there are just a few stats I'd like to throw out here. We all know what Silicon Valley is doing. We know what New York City is doing. We know what London is doing, Singapore and Hong Kong. These are really big financial ecosystems in the world today. And some of the pillars that one has to look at when we look at the fintech ecosystem is how capital is prudently managed, how risk is being taken. It has to be an appropriate risk taking. It's something that needs to drive what the fintech ecosystem looks like. We also have to be developing a strategy for negotiating issues, with the government bodies. We have to develop a proper strategy for being able to negotiate how services and products are delivered, how products are, being managed, how products are being pushed into the market, who's been affected, is there any negativity surrounding some of the products we're building? These are the kind of pillars we need to be looking at in the fintech ecosystem. And then a strong adherence to strong data privacy and security measures. Is the standards are super important and are becoming more and more important today. I know that with GDPR, this is, helping, but it would also help strongly if businesses, if, the government, if besides the government, who's obviously driving a lot of this, even if customers themselves, begin to adhere to strong, privacy and security standards, this begins to protect people. We used to be offline. We could think about dangers of being offline. You're walking on the street, somebody can waylay you on the street, somebody can maybe point a gun to your face or something. But now it is very different online. Online, you could go into your bank. There's no physical person next to you. And then all of a sudden, your money has been wiped out from somebody who's thousands of miles away from you. We need to start looking at how we are protecting people online. We need to also think about how businesses are, sharing data. When you come onto their website, how is your data collected? What's your data being used for? If there's a data breach somewhere, how does it affect those customers? So I think that the future of the financial ecosystem in Africa and beyond is a lot more than what we are seeing today. This is just the very beginning, but two things that I would like to drive this conversation from would be world happenings and the customers. I believe that the customers need to be protected, even for the individuals or for the organizations who are a part of the fintech ecosystem. They themselves also need to, because at the end of the day, some of them are also end users of this product that we're building, of the disruption that's currently happening. And then it means that protection has to be across board. And so I think at this point here, one of the things I don't know if I would use positive about, or I would say has largely impacted what the fintech ecosystem looks like right now is COVID-19 or the pandemic. Before the pandemic, you would find that there are some businesses that didn't exist. And during the pandemic and after the pandemic, we've seen some really phenomenal growth with certain businesses. And then it has changed the way things are done. I'll use TikTok, for example. I remember the first time TikTok came to my house, and I thought, what is this? What is this again? But there were challenges everywhere. People were connecting. People didn't feel so lonely anymore. And so some of these apps are brilliant in being able to help people come together. I still strongly believe that, being physical about your health, being physical about how you move today, and, getting more exercise is important. It's not something we can lose sight of anytime soon. But then again, I also want to believe that some of these social media apps, some of these apps have started to help, in bringing people closer together. As a result of this, I want to say that something that has been built to bring pleasure to people, to the end users, has now also become an avenue for making money for the builders of this solution. So case in point, again, let's use Twitter, or Twitter is now X. Let's use Twitter, or let's use or Apple, any of these big bodies. One of the things you can see today is that they are by themselves also becoming a competition to traditional banks as well as even the startups. Some of these big companies, some of these big solutions out there have also developed their own payment solution. And so I think the question here is, how do we begin to compete? Are there ways for us to collaborate? So I'm a big fan of collaborations. And I think that one of the things that will drive the fintech ecosystem, to doing more for our economy, to doing more for people in general, is if there are more collaborations. Competition is healthy. It makes people develop better and stronger. But I also believe that there are ways for us to be able to collaborate that will make life a lot easier for the end users. So I talked to someone, there's someone really dear to me that I talk to, and he does say things like, are we ready for the next pandemic? I think that the world happenings are things that we need to also look at very carefully. And while we develop solutions, while the fintech ecosystem is talking to the regulators to be able to disrupt successfully, one also needs to be able to plan for the future. Is AI a huge part of what we are now? Yes. Should there be more involvement of AI in what we do? I strongly believe so. I think the human mind is not a mind that you can disregard. I think that while AI plays its role in our lives, in the solutions that we're building, I also believe that the human being can be put to better use. So while people think that that AI is going to take their jobs today, I am of the opinion that why are we not doing more so that we can use AI for much good? Why are we not doing more as individuals? So if you see in where you are today and you think, okay, hang on a second, the job I do today, and AI is going to take over this job. I think the question to yourself would be, what am I doing? What am I going to do differently? How am I going to be able to live life a lot better? How do I even leverage on AI to be a better person and to probably make more money and live successfully in life? So I think that it's not a case of AI trying to take away your jobs. I think it is us being one step ahead, not of AI, but of life events, of life happenings, and begin to really think into the future. Sorry, I think I don't have too much time anymore. Begin to really think into the future. So I think I just wanted to just be able to recap to say that the fintech ecosystem today, it's a pretty big one. We're all working, there are collections of organizations working together to reach a common goal. And the common goal is to be able to serve, I believe, humanity better, is be able to make the world a better place, is be able to get richer at the same time while, we're bringing positive disruption to the world as it is. So thank you for listening and welcome many questions.
Wow. Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. If you all can observe that I smiled because I had to prompt her to say, you have just 1 minute to go. If I didn't do that, all of us will be here till tomorrow, and I can tell you she won't mix up anything. So it has been an exciting time up till this time. That this is 1 p.m. I think we are doing good with time. So, like I said, please let us drop our questions. I would have asked her a question, but I know that I'm going to keep that question till the end of this session. So let's call on our third speaker. Like I said, in the course of organizing this event, I had a one-on-one interaction with him. I've never met him before, but then within that 2 to 3 weeks, I've been able to pick up 1 or 2 things from him. He's a very timely person. He understands his role when it comes to compliance and risk. So we are going to be looking at fintech from that angle. I'm just trying to preempt him. I never had this discussion with him, but then I just want to believe that probably he might be coming from that end. So let us welcome Akim Martins to join us.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Can everyone hear? Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Cousin. Hold on while I share my slides, please. Just a second. Mr. Cousin, I think there is, I'm not able to share my slides right now. Can that be fixed? I can hear you. I think you're mute.
I'm calling on Joy. Can you grant? Can you grant access?
He can share now.
Okay, can go ahead now.
All right. 1 second, please. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Akim Martins. Thank you for the opportunity. It's a privilege. Let me start by saying that the other 2 speakers have done wonderful justice to this topic already. I appreciate how Femi, the approach Femi came with, taking us back in history a little bit. Hold on a bit. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, we can see.
Yes, you're good. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's a little bit blurry from this end. Just hold on a bit, please. Having some technical issues. 1 second, please. I'm having some technical issues here.
You can see the screen.
Yeah, but I can't see it from this, and I'm just trying to fix.
Oh, okay.
Hold on, please. Apologies.
No problem.
All right. I think I'll just manage it this way. So once again, thank you for the opportunity. So my name is Akim Martins. Femi and Mr. Femi and Mrs. Faith have done a lot of justice to this topic already. So I'm just going to be coming from an angle of information security as it relates to the fintech ecosystem. So just a brief introduction. I'm sure that everyone on this call already understands what fintech means, the industry, what it is all about, and how we have been partaking in it in the last few years of our lives. So we know for a fact that this industry has experienced quite what we call exponential growth in recent years, transforming the way financial services are delivered, accessed, and consumed. However, as we continue to see, the involvement of this sector, how this sector continues to grow, there are critical roles that information systems and information security plays, and this is what this presentation is going to be about. I'm just going to be looking at a number of concepts. I promise to make this as short as possible because I understand that a number of us have to go back to work. So let's start by taking a very simple and critical look at what information security is all about. So information security, as we know it, is all about a system that protects, sensitive information from unauthorized activities, unauthorized access, including inspection, modification, and recording and disruption of service as it relates to our daily operations. So the goal, the idea behind information security as it applies to the information technology sector, to the financial technology sector, is to ensure safety and privacy of critical data, such as, customer account details, financial data, and intellectual property. So let's take a look at why information security is quite important to the fintech ecosystem. So there are quite a number of them, top of my head, but I've tried as much as possible to narrow it down to just, I think, about 4 of them. So the first importance of the information security into financial technology sector is protection of sensitive financial data. So as we know it, all fintech companies in the in financial technology ecosystem handle vast amount of sensitive financial information, which includes personal data, payment details, and a couple of other things. Information security comes into is important because it's quite important to make sure that we ensure that we do not have unauthorized access and data breaches and cyber attacks as we have been experiencing in recent times. Let me mention something earlier about how in 2021, as based on a report from Checkpoint, Africa witnessed a 50% spike in cyber attacks, which amounted to about 1,500 attacks per week. So information security is ensuring that we have a system in place to make sure that we do not have this unauthorized access, data breaches, and cyber attack. Also, we're looking at trust and customer confidence. If you have a system, as an organization, if you have a system that is that you have a system where the information is secured. There are so many standards out there that can make sure that you have information secured. One of them is ISO IEC 27001 Information Security Management System that ensures that puts certain measures in place to ensure that your information and your data is secured. A lot of organizations out there are trying to become certified in this information security standards, just so that their potential customers and other stakeholders in the sector have confidence in their operations. So another importance of information security in the fintech ecosystem is regulatory compliance. The fintech industry is subject to, like I mentioned earlier, a number of regulations and data protection laws, and that's where compliance comes in. One of the standards, one of the sectors that actually regulates the financial technology sector is PCI DSS, for example. That's the payment card and data security standards. So there are a lot of standards out there that fintech organizations and a lot of other parties and stakeholders in the system will have to pay attention to. Mr. Cousin mentioned something earlier about how the future is now. All of these things are already happening. It's just that we are going to be seeing more of it in the next few years as the ecosystem continues to grow. Another important here is mitigating cybersecurity risk. Just like every other sector, just like every other organization or ecosystem that handles or transacts in financial transactions, the fintech sector is susceptible to cyber attacks. Some of these cyber attacks could be, phishing attacks, ransomware. You could have denial of service attacks. You could also have distributed denial of service attacks and a couple of others. How do these things affect operations? How do these things affect the ecosystem? Phishing attacks, for example, we have a lot of black hat hackers out there who could, send deceptive emails or messages impersonating legitimate entities to trick their employees and, most importantly, customers to revealing sensitive information such as, login credentials and financial details. So information security in that aspect is looking at what are the systems you are going to put in place to ensure that these things either do not happen or they are minimal. That's for phishing attacks. You could also have ransomware. These the black hackers, the hackers out there might, push ransomware into the system for their own financial gain at the expense of the financial gain of any organization in the ecosystem, and also at the expense of the reputation of the organization. So basically what you're trying to say here is the fintech ecosystem is there. We have startups, we have government, we have the government, we have regulatory bodies. However, these organizations have to pay close attention to how information security the importance of information security as it relates to their daily operations. We'll also be looking at, so after looking at the importance of information security as it applies to the fintech ecosystem, we have to explore how information security comes to play in this ecosystem. So, like I said earlier, the future of fintech, which is already happening, will be marked by escalating volume of, cyber attacks, cyber threats. So that is why it is important for organizations and every stakeholder in that sector to start putting threat intelligence systems in place. You should have intrusion detection systems, intrusion prevention systems to make sure that we minimize the risk of cyber attacks. Cyber attacks come in different forms. It could be SQL injections. You could have denial of service attacks where hackers come in and flood the servers of the organizations with a lot of traffic, which in turn disrupts operation. It could be disruption of service for an entire day. It could be for 48 hours. Imagine not being able to carry out operations for 48 hours. And then we have a number of other attacks like man-in-the-middle attacks and a couple of other ones. Then in order to counteract, cyber threats, fintech companies will emphasize the implementation of, robust authentication mechanisms. These things are already happening. Another thing is that organizations, especially fintech companies, are starting to, invest a lot in bringing in ethical hackers, to do what we call penetration testing to see if there are any vulnerabilities on the system. The earlier these vulnerabilities are detected, the earlier measures will be put in place to ensure that potential hackers, black hat hackers, do not come in to exploit the system. There are a couple of cyber attacks that could come in, that could happen to any organization, and any organization is susceptible to this. It doesn't matter your size. A couple of organizations have been hacked in the past. Google, Facebook, and a couple of organizations have been hacked in the past, and most of the times they face what we call distributed denial of service attacks, where they have serious service server downtimes that leads to loss of revenues. And when we say loss of revenues, we're talking in terms of billions of dollars, right? So still on measures that can be put in place by every party, every stakeholder in the fintech ecosystem. Encryption is also something. It will play a very strong role in safeguarding data integrity. So information security is the way it comes into the system is more or less talking about ensuring the confidentiality, the integrity, and the availability of, in this case, financial data and information, ensuring that these things are secure and they are safeguarded from unauthorized access. Because trust me, there are people sitting out there, hackers sitting out there on a daily basis. That is what they do. They are waiting to see if there are vulnerabilities in your system. Even ethical hackers that come in these days can as well, put digital trails in your system in such a way that they can always come back to. If they wake up tomorrow and decide to be black hat hackers, they can decide to exploit your system because they know these things. They've done your vulnerability testing. They know where the vulnerability is in your system. You understand? And you are dealing with a lot of financial transactions. You don't want your company to lose whatever reputation it has already built over the years. Also, fintech companies will, I mentioned threat intelligence earlier. Fintech companies, they're already doing this anyways. We'll invest a lot on threat intelligence. Threat intelligence, that's where intrusion detection systems will come in, and then intrusion prevention systems. An example of such systems will be, very strong firewalls. Okay, there is an entire network of how your systems operate, and then if on the ecosystem, on the network, of course you need to have your what's it called now, your firewall. There are so many things that make up the network system that make your operations work as a fintech company or a fintech player. And one of those things, which is very important, is your firewall. Your firewall will ensure, will make sure, will look at the kind of traffic that is coming in from outside your network as an organization, and see if it, based on a set of rules, to see if it is something that is acceptable into your network. These are the things that will, but it depends, you should have a very strong firewall. So that's what threat intelligence is all about. So also, they also utilize AI-driven security analytics and machine learning algorithms that will play a role in the information security management system. Okay. So let me just give you two more, okay, because I don't want to waste our time here. So another thing that fintech organizations will be looking at, the future of fintech security, is that it will entail strong collaboration between industry stakeholders. Okay, that's all the stakeholders here, as Mrs. Fitz rightly mentioned earlier. Startups, we have a lot of players here. We have IMTOs, we have agency banking, and a couple of other things. And then regulatory bodies. Regulatory bodies, of course, the CBN is part of the regulatory body in the Nigerian context. And then we have PCI DSS for payment card, and a couple of others. And then organizations are also, implementing international ISO standards, like I mentioned earlier, like ISO 27001, which is about information security management system, right? And then we have government and financial institutions. They will all have to work together, to establish comprehensive cybersecurity frameworks, right? So that's why we are seeing a lot of seminars coming up lately about cybersecurity systems, frameworks, and how to implement them, how it is important for management to also have management buy-in and employees. And when it comes to this information security thing, it doesn't stop at executive level, it doesn't stop at staff level. Everybody has to be involved. I'm talking of, when I say everybody, I mean even the cleaners in your organization, even the security guys, they need to understand the importance of information security as it relates to the day-to-day operations of the of whatever sector you find yourself in. And then user education will play a vital role. You know, an example of that is what Social Lender is doing today, this masterclass, which is something I commend. You know, letting people understand how these things work, bringing a number of people, brilliant minds to come in and explain, you know, share their experience about how the ecosystem works, what your own responsibility is as a customer, because everybody has a role to play in the entire ecosystem, especially including customers. And when I say customers, I mean both internal and external customers. Our colleagues at work are our internal customers, and then our customers out there, they all have roles to play. The organization currently work for as a unit, as a company, like a department or unit that actually sends out you know, mails to internal customers, you know, explaining the responsibility of everybody, you know, in terms of backing up data on a daily basis, ensuring that, for example, I mentioned phishing attacks earlier. If you receive, for example, as a customer, if you receive a link that is coming from an unusual source, you are not supposed to just click without at least contacting the technical team. So there are a couple of other ways that information security comes in. Information security plays a very crucial role in the entire ecosystem, regardless of where you find yourself in the entire chain, in the value chain system of the fintech ecosystem, as we have been discussing all day. So let's round up, right? So as the fintech system continues to experience this exponential growth that we are talking about, the future, which is today, will be intertwined with information security. It is, you cannot, no stakeholder in this ecosystem can ignore the importance of information security. And everybody in the organization, in any ecosystem, have to understand what how they come in, how they play, what their rules are, and all of that. Every employee, okay, because one weak link can jeopardize the entire security system of the organization. And then a lot of organizations will be embracing technologies like blockchain, just like Mrs. Faith mentioned earlier, and then alongside regulatory bodies. And then, like I mentioned earlier, it is very important that every organization in the ecosystem make everybody in the system, you know, understand the importance of, you know, the role you are going to play as an individual, regardless of where you find yourself in the value chain. So in summary, information security is crucial to ensure that to ensure that we safeguard the confidentiality, the integrity, and the availability of data and information as it relates to the financial technology ecosystem. Thank you very much for listening. I yield the mic for now.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Akin. So if I'm a prophet, at least by now I should have about 44 people on this call. So I should be contacted. So for me to prophesy. So I had no discussion with him, but I just know that that is the angle from which is going to come from. And then if I have to just summarize what he has just said, coming from Mrs. Faith that said fintech, there are different components coming together for a common goal. So that goal is now explained by Femi to say you have cards, you have POS, you have ATM, you have this, you have banks, everybody, you want to make a payment, you want to do this. But what Akim has just said is to say that in every situation, we have what we call unwanted guests. So unwanted guests are this set of people that we are talking about, the hackers, those that will sit down somewhere, write code to make sure that you cannot have access to your, to your system, and then all of that. So there is a popular say, that if you want to wine with a devil, you need to do that with a very long spoon. So while we are trying to wine and dine, we should also be mindful of this set of people, to make sure that we are not in any way exposed to them, so that they will not jeopardize everything that we have put in all our effort to do. So we will move to to the next stage, which is the question and the answer. So I want to believe we have questions, but let me just quickly go to let me check if we have questions from the chat box. So okay, somebody has taken away. Okay, they said, will fintech replace traditional banks in the future? So anybody can take that question. Our three speakers. Will fintech replace traditional banks in the future?
Okay. Let me answer that question. So the answer is no. It's just that fintechs will eat into the space, some of the spaces of traditional banks, right? And would also improve efficiency of the banks that are ready to collaborate. So the answer is no.
Okay. Yeah, there's a question here. I think this question is directed at Femi. There was a slide that you shared showing a breakdown between cards and non-cards. So the question is, what channels were included in the cards?
So for the cards, it's all channels: ATM, web, POS, any channel where you need to make use of a card. You understand? So I think I understand why the questionnaire asked that question. So for some transaction type, it will be counted twice. Say, for example, you go to an agent and you try to make a transfer. You would initiate the debit using your card. So you give the agent your card, you would enter your PIN, and then your account is debited. So that is a card transaction. So that part of the transaction will be counted as card. Now, the other part, because you didn't collect cash from the agent, you told the agent, help me send it to my mother in the village. And then the agent will now use probably NIP or the other transfer services available in the market. You understand? Either NIP, either through InterSwitch or other people. So what happens is that second leg is counted as a non-card. So there are two different transactions. The one that debited you is regarded as one transaction, card. The one you use to credit, the beneficiary's account is another transaction, because at that point, the agent's wallet is debited without card, and the beneficiary account is credited without card. So that's the answer.
So a follow-up question to that. So what happens if I go online, I make a payment using my card detail? So does it count as a card or non-card?
It counts as a card because you've entered your card details.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, that's fine. Mr. Kim, there's a question for you here. They said protecting user data is highly crucial. Some individuals find it difficult, taskful to protect the crucial digital data. What are the security tips you will suggest to overcome these challenges?
Sorry, Mr. Cousin, I was off for a bit. Can you come again with that question?
Okay.
I know you.
Okay, I said the question is that there are some organizations that find it difficult to protect customer data. So as an individual, so what are the security tips that you are going to suggest to us for us to overcome some of these challenges? Hello, did you get the question? Sakim, you are mute if you are speaking.
I think he's having challenges with network. If you don't mind, can I
Okay.
take that down
Okay.
while he sorts out the network issue?
Okay, can go ahead.
Okay. So some of the security tips as an individual that you can take is you need to protect your sensitive data. Your sensitive data include your card data. Many times when you go to the ATM queue, you see a lot of people flaunting their cards. You know, that is a no-no. That's exposing yourself. You need to also protect other sensitive data. You don't put your BVN on just any site, you know, except in a site where you trust the source. So again, for organizations, continuous education, which Mr. Kim mentioned in his presentation, organizations need to continuously educate their customers and their partners. You know, and then organizations will need to also keep to the international standards. We have standards like PCI DSS, the different ISOs. I think ISO 2007, if I'm not mistaken. So once we do that, we'll be protected. Then as an individual, if you feel uncomfortable, right, if you have your data somewhere or you're about to input your data somewhere, maybe online or anywhere, if your sixth sense, if you just have that feeling of, I don't feel safe here, the first thing for you to do is to just take a step back and do more research on that place you are about to enter your data. Then finally, as an individual, finally, before you answer any call, because we have so many types of phishing and the likes, somebody contacts you through any medium and is requesting for sensitive data, please, as much as possible, try and do a second confirmation through another medium. So if the person sent you an email or a WhatsApp and is sensitive, put a call through to that person. If the person is not far away from you, you could even walk to his desk. So always do a second confirmation, you know, before sending out your data. So these are the answers from my perspective. Thank you.
Okay,
Hi,
thank you so much. So,
sorry,
Sakim,
apologies.
okay, you have something to add to
Apologies.
it?
I had network issues.
Okay.
I don't know who spoke now. Sorry, please, can you?
It's
Just now.
Femi that just finished speaking now. He tried to answer a question. Yeah.
Okay, Femi practically answered the question. Thank you very much, Femi. So so another thing you can consider is to do daily regular backup, because in order for you not to lose data, you should find a way to automate the backing up of your data. You don't have there are several ways to do that. Microsoft OneDrive is one way, Google Drive is another. So you have to put systems in place that will ensure that you have regular backup. This automation will make sure that you don't have to manually update your drive. So as you are imputing data, as you are processing data, it is automatically going into a repository. So you understand. So you don't have any situation where you just suddenly lose data. You understand? And then another simple way, very common to users, is to make use of strong passwords. Right? I know that is very basic, but it is very important. We keep telling people that it is important not to just use a password that can easily that can easily be predicted. So, for example, my name is Akim Martins, right? But I'm popularly known as Amish, right? I cannot decide to make my password Amish. Somebody who is close to me can just think, say, his password might be Amish, and I have sensitive data on my laptop. Somebody can just decide to let me try what AMISH will cost, and then is able to access my laptop and other things that are sensitive on my laptop, right? So it is highly recommended. Most times, that's where you see websites and organizations recommend that you use alphanumeric password and password that have special cases. So I could use capital letter, small letter, numbers, and a couple of special characters like at or hash. And then one more thing, organizations can decide. In fact, it's not decide. It's important that organizations put measures in place to ensure that users cannot just download any form of software on their laptops, right? So if at all you are going to download any software, anything on your laptop, there will be an admin portal that require a username and login to be able to download. That's a control measure to ensure that you don't download any malicious software that could jeopardize the security of the entire network system. So those are some tips, and there are a couple of them online that you can always. I hope that helps. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Femi and Akim. So they have spoken from the two perspectives, individual, and then from a corporate organization. So the last question here, anybody can pick it. So what do you think is the future of fintech, particularly in the Africa market? And what do you think is the next product or service that needs to be built for the African market?
I believe Mr. Femi will be in the best position to answer that question.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Akim. I'll answer the question. So the future of fintech in Africa is huge. In fact, fintech is part of Africa's future. Just like we showed, during the presentation, we said already 50% of transactions happening in Nigeria is already done by the fintechs. Until we're able to do everything from the comfort of any location we are in, which is what Gen Zs and Gen Alpha demand, that means there are still so many solutions to be solved. Until I'm able to, to do almost everything, I don't need to leave the comfort of any location I am to get a service. Then fintechs will continue to have things to innovate on. So as per the next big product, honestly, I can't answer. The challenges are much, like I said, until we can do everything from the comfort of anywhere. Those are opportunities. And as far as those opportunities are there, until I can sit in my house and then probably press one or two buttons and my car gets repaired, until we go so granular. So the next big product, I don't know. All I know is that there are so many opportunities out there, and you can take one challenge, look for a digitalized solution, and that might just be your own big win.
Okay, I think we have about 1 minute to the end of our answer and the question session. So I don't know if anybody has a question. If not, I have a question that I want to ask. Do we have anybody there that have a question? Okay. When Mrs. Fleet was giving our own presentation, she made mention of Twitter now turning to X. Maybe it is X Factor, X whatever, but it's now X. And then it's now going into payment space. And I know that before now, Payday is being used on Twitter to make a payment. So, and then I've heard so many people talking about fintech collaboration. Need to collaborate. Then you do less of competition. But looking at what happened between Meta and Twitter, so can we still rely so much on collaboration, or we do 50 collaboration, 50 competition? So how do we balance this? Because looking at Payday, I don't know the detail of what X is going into now. So Payday has been part of Twitter. So are they going to leave them? Are they coming up with their own payment engine? So the question is, how do you balance competition and collaboration? So that's my last question.
All right. Okay, thank you. Very interesting question. So there would always be competition. It's just that the line, between competition and partners brings us to co-opetition. Between competition and people you are collaborating, the line will continue to thin out. Okay. In the case of Payday and then what Twitter is trying to do, yes, Twitter as a platform wants to also have its own payment engine. The thing is for Payday to also innovate and metamorphose. They could act as an example. I don't know if this is the game plan. They can metamorphose and become the interoperability gateway for Twitter, where you can make payments. Just let me mention the impossible. Well, something that looks impossible today, but could happen, where you can make payment maybe between your Twitter account and a trade account. Somebody can facilitate that interoperability. Who says it can be Payday? So again, there would always be competition, but the line between competition and collaboration will continue to blur out, and it's led for companies to continue, to innovate and see how they can do this. Look at Apple Pay, Samsung Pay, all those guys. People like Mastercard and Visa are also powering some of these payments, at the back end. So collaboration can come in any form, and it's left for you as maybe the person starting up, doing the startup, to see what you can benefit via collaboration and how you can compete within the same space. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's like you just hit the nail on the head. So just have to balance that. So thank you so much. It has been an interesting 1 hour, 40 minutes. So I will hand over to Mr. Moody, who is the CEO of Social Lender, to give us a closing remark and bring this to an end.
No more question.
Do we still have question?
If you have a question, shoot.
If you have a question, we are here.
Okay. A quick one. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. My name is Justice. I write for Tech Economy. So I would like to know how prevalent are these
Can anyone hear you?
cyber attacks? Or do we have like statistics? I know most of these cyber criminals.
Mr. Justice, we are losing you intermittently. I don't know if you want to come again. You can hear us.
Yeah, Mr. Justice, you're breaking up. We can't hear you again. So, but if I can pick what he's trying to ask, he wants to have an idea. Do we have a figures to the how prevalent all these attacks are? So, do we have figures to show that yes, it is 20%, it is increasing, decreasing, or something?
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, once again. So there are quite a number of statistics. There are quite a number of figures. One is Femi mentioned one earlier about a report in 2021 from Checkpoint, talking about how Africa witnessed about 50% spike in cyber attacks, and that easily translated to about 1,500 attacks per week. So the market is there, the system is there, the gain is there, the potential is there for in sub-Saharan Africa and Africa generally, right? For this cyber, for these hackers to, to exploit. The vulnerabilities are there. So it will always happen. So instead of actually waiting for the potential of these things happening or waiting for them to happen in your environment, it is better to put systems in place, measures in place. It is better to be proactive to put these things in place so that if at all there's anybody out there that is trying to mess with your system, you have an intrusion detection system and an intrusion prevention system just to make sure they don't happen. They are figures. I don't have a lot of them top of my head right now, but they are there. There are so many of them that happen on a daily basis. One that is very common that I have experienced a number of times is denial of service. Like you're going to flood your servers, right? You won't be able to operate for say 10 hours, 12 hours, and depending on what they're trying to achieve, you understand. So it's better to put measures in place because they happen every day. Even the big corporations in the world experience these things. So it's better to be proactive, put measures in place to ensure that if at all anybody wants to try, they are very much ready. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Hakeem. Thank you. You've been thoroughly very good today. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. We have to bring this to a close. It's been a fruitful time of learning, sharing, understanding, and having foresight into what the future looks like for FinTech. Thank you to all our speakers, Mr. Hakeem, thank you, Mr. Olufemi Davis, thank you, Mrs. Faith Adesemowo, thank you for your time. Mr. Davis, Olufemi started with giving us a breakdown of where we were and where we are now, where we're looking at and where we're headed to. Mrs. Faith looked at the ecosystem in general and focused more on the customers. Let's not forget that the future of FinTech is also to serve our customers who are king, right? And Hakeem told us about security, about our platforms, our system, protecting our internal and external stakeholders throughout the journey, which I think sort of ties all the conversations together, in a very beautiful package. And we had interesting questions, and it's good to know that FinTech is not going to replace the traditional brick and mortar high street banks, and some of the things that have been put in place by our FinTech players and some of the things that have been done also from security perspective to make sure we're all being proactive and not reactive. But by the nature of disruption, looking at what AI is doing, it is very important that we'll start paying more attention to security because there's a lot of disruption going on at the speed of thought. There's a new application, new ways of doing things, and paying attention to security is high, is top in the agenda. And also payment generally moving from card to NFTs to contactless payment generally. I believe that as end users, as FinTech players, as consumers, we should start looking out for how do we position our businesses, right? How do I position my brand to start accepting contactless payments? What does that mean to my company? If I have an ATM next to me and that's where everybody goes to withdraw money, what happens when contactless payments becomes the in thing and everybody wants to use that? Do I wait till my customers? I'm losing customers because I don't have the right channel of collection. These are the kind of things sessions like this bring to your attention, and you start building out your businesses in those directions to be able to accept more channels of payment, more FinTech channels of payment and collections, right? And also I kind of emphasize as a startup, regulatory body, business owner, what does my customer segmentation looks like? At the moment, who am I servicing? In the next 10 years, who will I be servicing? There's a new market segmentation that is building up. It's called Gen Alpha. Do you have a product for them? Do you know how to reach them? Right. And those are some of the critical questions we need to start asking ourselves as a business, as a service provider, as a solution provider. We need to start asking ourselves those critical questions. All right. How do we serve the emerging market? How do we evolve with these new markets? There's different segmentation that we can also break that Gen Alpha into that a lot of us are not thinking about at the time. The sheer idea that things are now opening bank account and doing transaction is foreign to some products and to some businesses, and we need to start looking at that, a 16-year-old, a 15-year-old, a 14-year-old, they are doing transactions at the moment. They are found on, new apps like Thread. They are found on, evolving app like Twitter, which is now X, Facebook. Where do you meet them and how do you service those kind of customers? That's the future we are looking at, and it's happening really fast. It's happening really fast. So I want to thank everybody for coming. I want to thank the internal team that put this masterclass together. It's been fantastic. Thank you to the internal team. Thank you to our presenter, Kazim Ogumbai, for thoroughly presenting and making sure we get every segment. And the way you presented it has been really simple, and I'm sure everybody could get the meat of the gist. Thank you to our guests and our presenters, for sharing their knowledge. These are all industry leaders in their various respects. So please, before I allow them go, I'll allow them share their details where we can find them. So in no particular order, Mr. Kazim, where can we find you and how can we connect to you on a social media space so that we can connect with you and continue the conversations on those platforms? Mr. Kazim?
Yeah, okay. I'll drop my LinkedIn here.
All right. Can be found on LinkedIn.
LinkedIn and my phone number.
Your phone number might be a bit private. I'll just, okay. I don't know if you're comfortable with that, but Twitter handles, Facebook handles, Thread handles, where best we can find you, right, to continue the conversation. All right, while you're doing that, Mr. Hakim, you want to tell us where best we can find you?
Yeah, good afternoon once again. Thank you very much, Mr. Moody. So a couple of channels, but the best way, I think this is a professional setting, so the best way will be on LinkedIn. So you can find me on LinkedIn as very simple, Hakim Martins. The Hakim, I could drop it on the, I think there's a chat box.
Yeah. Hakim Martins, on a simple search on LinkedIn, Hakim Martins.
Yeah, the Hakim starts with an H, Hakeem. It's as simple as that. And then Martins.
Fantastic.
So let's connect on LinkedIn. We can always talk.
All right, fantastic. Thank you very much. Mr. Olufemi Davids, are you still with us?
Yes, I am, sir.
Fantastic.
Also, yeah, you can reach me, Olufemi Davis, on LinkedIn. That's the Olufemi Davis that is with InterSwitch. I think I've already received one connection from here already, sir.
All right, fantastic. So let's build on this conversation. Let's continue the conversation. If you have more questions, you can reach out to either of the speakers privately through LinkedIn. But please don't go on their LinkedIn and say, hello, sir, and leave the conversation open. Yeah, right. They are busy people. So go on LinkedIn and be purposeful. Say hello from this conversation. I'd like to know XYZ so that they can respond to you robustly, not just hello, sir. Right. So let's use those platforms purposefully. So thank you once again. Thank you everyone for making it to date. We would share communications with everybody as regard the next edition of Social Lender Masterclass. This has been fantastic. I know there were some news, print press in the house, so you might be seeing part of this conversation on traditional medias, also on new medias online also, because we had some few guests who were in the press join us during the course of this conversation. So thank you, and do have a pleasant day, everyone.
Yeah, thank you so much. Have a nice day.
Thank you.
And TGIF.
Yeah, have a good weekend.
Pausing. Pausing.
Yeah, I can hear you, Mubarak.
Left.